welcome to the first episode of the Flashlight Fanatics podcast. My name is Darren Yeo, and this is Tim McMahon. We're your hosts for this podcast. And today, this is our first one. We just had a bit of a chat on what to talk about, and it's kind of a good time. It's quite fitting to talk about blackouts and flashlights or blackouts, maybe like general emergency situations, because we've had some dramas here in Vic, haven't we, Tim?
Yeah, it's a bit. I was sitting here in the dark here, but it's mostly just for effect. And more recently, the past about a week ago, people had a blackout for about 2-3 days. There was some pretty bad storms, or storm that came through and took out a whole bunch of trees, and the trees fell on the power lines, and there was, I think, 6 main transmission lines that collapsed during the high winds out near Loyang, I think, and that was really bad. So I think about 500,000 households were impacted. I wasn't impacted, which is great in where I am, but about 3-4 years ago, I have been impacted by a similar type of storm, and we're without power for about 3 days. And back then, my daughter, she's about 4 now, so she was about 1.5 at the time, and we were kind of freaking out a bit as new parents, trying to figure, okay, we've got no electricity for we don't know how many days, and luckily I was into torches at that point, so I had my trusty Zebra light. It's the SC64. This one's a W high, but this torch can last about a year on the lowest mode, which is really great, but it's overkill for what I'm using it for. But I reached for this and used this torch. I also had a lantern, so on the side here I've got a BLF LT1, and this is just a little smaller version, the LT1S. They're just a couple of lanterns powered by lithium cells, and they're great for running for several days. You could get several days, or if you have a low mode, about a month with these. So they're really good for if you need to have dinner or something at nighttime. Or we were washing my daughter in a bathtub, and we had to heat up some water at nighttime. So that was another challenge, but fortunately we could use gas. So we've got a gas supply for our hot water service. So we're able to heat the water, make a nice warm bath for my daughter, and then use these lanterns and torches to get by. So having the BLF LT1, this little LT1S, was really, really handy at nighttime. And that's about it in terms of lighting. They were really helpful. Probably noticed this little headlamp too. I've got several headlamps I can just reach for at any given moment.
I bet you no one questioned all your flashlight collections then. People come over and they look at mine and they're like, what the heck? So, sometimes you almost,
it's like
not like we wish for a blackout, but it's almost like, yes.
The first on our flashlights, this is a blackout, we could use torches.
What are those 2 lights that you have again? Those two lanterns?
Yeah, so I got the BLF LT1, which was made by BLF members. DBSR was the main person who designed it, and it was produced by Sofirn, but it was very much built on the budgetlightforum.com website by DBSR. And this was another one that Sofirn made, which is just a smaller version of it. But they can change in brightness, so I can just hold it to go up and down, and I can change the color temperature, so can make it go really cool white, or make it go really, really warm, so 2,700 Kelvin, so nice and warm. So,
so there's cool a couple of LEDs, a bunch of LEDs in there.
Yep, the little one here has several. I think there's 36, might be 18 of each. 1, 2, 3, 4. There's quite a few little LEDs in this one. But in the big LT1, which I've just got hooked up here, to try and get it attached to a tripod. So there's a little tripod hole, and you can't see like that. So they've got a little tripod hole there. I'll turn that back on. And this one has 4 LEDs, I think. So there's fewer LEDs, or maybe there's 8. Yeah, it switches between them to change between cool white and neutral white or warm white.
Those are some really cool like lanterns, man. Like I've seen a lot of people post about them, but you know, I've never actually bitten the bullet and just thought I'll get one myself. But you know, from what you were saying, you know, they do have a really long runtime, which is important during a blackout because you're not going to be able to recharge it. Those two take normal lithium ion cells, right? Do they take primaries as well in case?
These ones only take lithium, so you've got the 18650 cells in the BLF LT1, and this little one takes a single 21700 cell. So they're just the lithium batteries, but yeah, it's a good point. Do you have any torches with lithium primaries? Or?
Lithium primaries, yeah. So I mean, the main ones I have because I'm more of a tactical light sort of guy, and you know I've got this one here. It's a Nightcore MH12SC. It's the older model. I think they've got a new one now, the MH12 Pro, but it comes with the cartridge that you can insert into the back because this normally takes 21700 cells, and you can put that basically 18650 cartridge in there, and then also run it off CR123 cells. So I think that's a good little trick to have, but I wouldn't call this. I mean, this is you could use it during a blackout, but because it's got such a, you know, what I mean, it's got such a throwy kind of beam, you probably point it at, you know, point at the ceiling and light up a room that way. But it's not as nice as like a lantern that you have, or maybe a more floodier flashlight. And you know, you do have other lights as well. I've got a whole so many of them. For some reason, I just don't have a heap of them out with me today. But you know, you got things like the Ray Light Pineapple Mini and the Ace Beam H16. I'm not actually sure if this one will accept AA cells, but there are a lot of these AA cell flashlights out there. And I mean, those you can find those AA cells everywhere. Oh, it does. Okay, that's good. I never tried one in there, but they all usually accept them. And yeah, I find what's cool as well is that because a lot of these also have a tail end magnet, so you, especially in the dark, you know, if you've got a few of them set up in different rooms, and maybe you've got a bit of flooding going on or that kind of thing, it's always good to be able to use that hands-free option as well. So I think that, yeah, kind of all those features go together. But for people who, I mean, people that aren't like us with 100 different flashlights around, most people, you know, picking up a light will assume that it's going to be able to take primary cells. I find, because I was showing one of my mates some of my collection the other day, and he's like, "Oh, there's no USB charging here. You know, what kind of battery is this? It looks like it's gigantic battery, and it's, you know, it's a normal 18650 21700 cell. But normal people who aren't really, you know, so knowledgeable in lights, I think it's important for them to have something that takes primary cells, you know, in a blackout, especially if they keep a stockpile of them as well. Because I've got like 50 AA cells just lying around. But yeah, I can't really think of anything else that I mean, at the moment, I would say I'm not super prepared. I mean, I've got the LumenTop AD01 that takes a D cell. And, you know, if you put a lot of those lights down on the lower modes, they can run for ages. It's like what you were talking about with the LT1 on the lowest mode. It runs for days and days. And when you don't know when the power's coming back, I think, you know, that longevity, that sustained output, even if it is a really low output, is so important. And yeah, because, and I guess most people, would you say a lot of people, you know, have flashlights around the house or during these situations, or they rely on candles? And I don't know.
Yeah, they might have a couple of flashlights and probably some cheap OLED ones from Bunnings, and yeah, they might not last that long, so you want to use the lowest mode. And to be honest, these lanterns can be overkill. If you just want to eat food at night or do something, it can be a little bit annoying having like this that's not that close to your eyes, but if that's really, really bright, it's just annoying your eyes to have to look at it. You've got the light shining in your eyes. So if I turn this off, I find that it's effective to have a light like on a low medium mode, just pointing at a wall, and I find that just the reflected light lights up the whole room. So bouncing the light off the ceiling or a wall is a really effective way of just lighting up the whole room at nighttime, so that you can get sufficient lighting without having to look at something that's glaring and burning into your eyes when you're just trying to eat some dinner. To be honest, the lanterns they're good fun and they can be good, but if you just want to eat dinner in peace and not have a light in your eyes, just grab a torch, put it on a medium mode, point it at a wall or a roof, and the light will just reflect down and you can see.
Yeah, that's a really good demo, Tim. That's a really good demo, like just the ceiling bounce. And we use that at times to test the relative brightness of a flashlight ceiling bounce test. But, pointing it at the ceiling is just a really great way of diffusing, naturally diffusing the light, especially when most people's ceilings are white anyway. So it's going to reflect and disperse that light, around the room. And, it's kind of what we were talking about before, where we've got lights like this. Sometimes, these lights have a really strong hotspot and focused beam, and it's gonna be quite annoying if there's no diffuser. But yeah, if it can tail stand as well, I think that's important. Like these tactical lights, that doesn't tail stand, so that you might have to pop it into like a cup or something like that, pointing at the roof. That's a good good little workaround, I suppose. But those side switch lights, I find come really like more in handy, don't you reckon, in these sort of situations?
Yeah, and you made a good point about trying to balance stuff in a cup because I spent quite a while trying to figure out, okay, what can I use to balance this torch against the wall at the right angle so I get the most effective diffused beam coming back onto the table and the kitchen table. And I ended up using like the headband, the little silicone thing, just as a rest stop. There's a holder, and I put a torch pointing against the wall, and that worked effectively. So you don't need a whole bunch of fancy lanterns, but it's good to have at least some. If you can get some lithium-ion torches, like with 18650s or 21700s, you usually get a fairly good runtime on the lowest mode, and that can be good enough for giving you light. But when the power does go out and you've got trees that have fallen across all these power lines, at least in my area, we've got hybrid fiber coaxial cables for the internet connection. They run along the power lines. So when the power goes out, the internet goes out. The landline wired internet goes down. And if the power goes out to all the whole area, it's just complete blackout everywhere, and you'll find that the mobile towers go down too, and you no longer have data connections. I guess disclaimer, I work for a telco, but they prioritize the traffic for 4G, 5G. You'll end up having voice being prioritized over the data connection, so that people can at least make emergency calls and phone calls and make those voice calls. So I find that it's useful to have a modem, and I've got a 12-meter pole, and I can shove that up on a bag and try and get mobile access. If we want to be able to contact someone, I'll put this on a bag and hoist it up in the air to try and reach direct line of sight to the nearest mobile tower, because the one that's 500 meters away might be completely without power and not working, or it could be congested with having several thousand people trying to use that one mobile tower. So then if I can lift up the modem a bit higher, I might be able to get to another mobile tower and access that one and make phone calls and let people know we're okay. And it's useful to have. You're probably looking at your battery life on your phone as well. So it's handy to have a power bank like this XTAR PB2S. It's got a couple of rechargeable batteries that you can use in torches. These are 21700s, but you can, USB-C, USB-A, you can plug it into a phone or whatever device to keep it charged for a couple of days, because we're talking you might be without power for like 3 days, and like by the second or third day, you're probably thinking, okay, I need to keep my phones charged. And if you can't access data to talk to people on like Facebook to figure out where to go, and it might not be safe to go anywhere because there's power lines down, you're going to feel a little bit isolated and disconnected. So it's nice if you're able to get the internet connectivity back and be able to talk on those Facebook groups and contact. There might be relief shelters nearby where you can take your family and get access to even drinking water. Because in fact, 3 years ago, I think 89 or 90 suburbs were impacted by the storm where the water was contaminated. It bypassed the treatment part, and there was essentially contaminated water. It wasn't treated properly. They recommended boiling the water for the next couple of days, which was another thing to throw into the mix. You now had no power. We wanted to be able to shower, like give a baby a bath with hot water, so we'd have to heat it up with gas. And then on top of that, we couldn't drink the water straight. You had to boil it and let it cool down. And
pills that you can put in the water, I've got a bunch of them. They're like water purification tablets. So it's really, I can't remember what chemical they have in it, sodium something, but you drop them in and it will purify, I think, about 10, 15 liters of water, just a tiny little pill. And, those are a nice little, just a nice little thing chucking into your buck out bag. But I bought like about 200 of them a while back, and I've still got them. I don't know if they're expired yet, but that can be a good little fail safe as well. I think drinking water is super important. I was thinking as well.
That's pretty cool
About there's a few other, because we're going more. Yeah. It's just one of those things that you chuck in your bag. I got like other types of emergency meals and stuff like that, but I don't really bother anymore these days. I live in the city, so it's as you know, generally speaking, when the power goes down, it comes back up pretty quickly. I don't think I've ever had an issue living in the city, but people further out, such as yourself, really these considerations really become important. Because we're talking about emergency situations as well, like some torches, some flashlights have strobe and SOS features, or like a beacon feature. And I think that's pretty cool as well. Like, not all of them have beacon features, but maybe a strobe or at least an SOS mode to draw attention. Do you have any thoughts about that, Tim?
Fortunately, I've never been in a situation where I really needed to use SOS, or I guess if you're in a flood situation and it's nighttime, you might because we have had some really severe floods around Melbourne and Victoria and around Australia. That's where it could come in handy if you're stuck in the roof or on top of a roof. It may be useful to be able to just signal someone with a torch. You don't necessarily need to do SOS, but that'd help if you've got a SOS signal being emitted and you're on a rooftop trying to signal someone at nighttime. That'd be super scary to be in that situation.
Yeah. And it's really cool how LEDs are getting so efficient these days. And, I wrote down some in my notes here, the XHP 70.3, which, correct me if I'm wrong, but if you at 5 amps, it can produce over 3,000 lumens pretty easily. And that's really incredible to be able to produce that much light, because especially on the lower modes as well, that comes in handy, because you don't really care about that light having really long distance range in this sort of situation, but it's more just the lumen output at short range.
Because you can get really big searchlights with 6, 12 emitters, or even 16 and 32 emitters. You these massive lights, like IMALENT make them, where you can just light up an area for a couple of kilometers and it just completely lights up the area. yeah, they'd be helpful for lighting up disaster areas at nighttime if you don't have a generator with power. I guess that's another consideration for storms, having a generator. And I don't have access to a generator. Well, I don't have a generator, but my brother does have one for his work. He's got a couple as a tradie, so he can, when he goes on site to do a job, if there's no power on the site, then he can just use a generator to keep his tools working. So he's got a couple, and when there was a storm about 3 years ago here, he kindly brought a generator across to keep our fridge going, just so we didn't have all the food get spoiled. We didn't want the meat in the freezer and all that to go off, and we're able to put the generator near the kitchen, run a power cable through to the kitchen, and it's pretty noisy. I feel a bit sorry for the neighbours because you're running a generator 24/7 is a bit noisy, but I did hear a couple of them in the neighbourhood running. Sorry, a bit of a tangent, but just thinking different things you face when you're in a have a power outage or a disaster situation. You really need access to power, and a generator is one way of keeping your fridge and whatnot running. And it's probably not really my story to tell, but people who have certain medical conditions, they might find that it's a life and death situation where they need to have power running, and in that situation, you may need to have a backup generator that's able to continuously supply your devices, and that's a whole other issue unto itself with the power companies. I think they'd be aware of the medical priority customers and them needing to get power access, but they really need generators to keep going, and otherwise they could put their life at risk.
Yeah, I'm sure that. I mean, the generators are pretty expensive. I'd say most people don't have one, but yeah, from what it sounds like, especially if you've got some medical conditions or if you're living a bit far out, be definitely worth the investment. And of course, you can charge your other batteries and stuff like that, but run essential equipment off it. With LEDs, I know a lot of people buying torches from shops these days. It might have been a while since maybe the average person has gone and bought something and they're just not sure about emitters, but LED tech is probably I would say the predominant tech now in flashlights, because they're just so much more efficient. And gone are the days where we'd be relying on those halogen lights, and some people probably still are just using those. I don't know if and because I went down to even Coles the other day, and you could see they're even selling almost every light there is just LED of some sort. So, but I think if you have a choice, definitely go for LED. It's going to last a lot longer. The stuff that you get at the shops, though, like at Bunnings or from Coles and stuff like that, I'd say it's pretty average. That's why Tim and I will recommend you a bunch of them. We'll put a list. We'll go through maybe a list later on and stick it in the video description, but we can talk about a few different lights as well that you might recommend for maybe people, that don't know much about lights. And one of the things that look, when you have lights that run off primaries, you have the convenience of just being able to run down to the shop, stick in any batteries, but generally speaking, they're not going to be as powerful, and they're more basic sort of flashlights. If you want something brighter, lithium ion is the way to go, but what you're sacrificing there is, of course, the ability to just swap in another one, unless you've got a few more spare lithium ion cells, 21700 cells or 18650 cells just lying around that are pre-charged. But in a blackout, if you use up the batteries on all of those lights, I mean, if you have the generator, like you said, fantastic. Or you can, you have chargers as well. Some chargers can run off a power bank, hey? Like the XTAR. I'm not sure if you can run the XTAR VC8 on a power bank. You should be able to, yeah?
You can. It's just not it's not going to be super efficient. To use a power bank to charge other batteries, you'll be a lot of energy lost. I guess, yeah, the primaries, so you got like Alkaline 1.5 volt, your common AA, AAA batteries, and you got the Energizer L91s and L92s, which are like 1.7, 1.8 volt batteries. They all primary, so you can't recharge them. But I'm a little bit cynical about the AA torches, and like a lot of the stuff you buy in the supermarket or hardware store, I find that they're not super efficient, and they'll chew through the batteries. So that can be a problem because when you go to use it, if it's not going to last long, and if you've got a multi-day issue or outage of no power, then you can't really rely on it. So if you can, it's good to switch over to the lithium-ion torches, which they're not the same in terms of safety. So you can't treat a lithium battery like you can an alkaline battery. I mean, you don't want to just throw an alkaline battery around it. It's like chemicals, and you don't want to. Yeah, you have to dispose of it correctly. But with a lithium battery, you can't just chuck it in your pocket because you might short circuit it on your keys or something, and then it'll blow up. So you need to be really careful when you're handling lithium batteries because they can get really hot and explode if you connect the negative to the positive somehow by short circuiting it. That's if you've got a protected battery. So I won't go into the whole protected versus unprotected, but if you've got like a protected lithium battery and it says it's protected, usually it'll have some kind of short circuit protection built into it, and then that can help reduce the risk of that exploding if you put it in your pocket. But a lot of the times, if you go to a vape store or something like that and look at cells, there'll be unprotected cells, and they're very easy to short circuit those if you put them in your pocket with keys and double explode. That's why they keep saying don't use it for vaping, and they just don't want people to shove them in their pockets and have them explode.
Yeah, that's what worried me a lot about lithium-ion cells in the beginning. I know I had some issues when I got back into flashlights again. The chargers that you use are so important. Like I was using some cheap chargers, and I think both of them are not balanced so that it can basically overcharge a certain cell when you're putting two cells in there. So that's a big issue. But with, I guess, a lot of mainstream lights out there, yeah, it's hard to say. But there's some, you see, like I know what you're talking about. Some of them that take those 3 times AAA configuration, and they all tend to just be pretty crap. The average ones, they're like $2 or something that you get in the shop, and they're just so inefficient, and they leak. They cause the batteries to leak if you leave them in for too long. Lithium ion doesn't have. I mean, for me, it doesn't really have that issue at all. But you just have to, keep in mind battery safety. And a lot of the newer lights, Phoenix, Nightcore, especially these days, and what else is there? We've dealt with so many brands, Tim, Next Torch, Ace Beam, even budget brands like Convoy. They're pretty efficient, but I guess like brands like Phoenix and Olight and Nightcore, they all have onboard charging, so you don't really have to take the battery out of the tube if you're using it on a semi-regular basis, which I think, because I was trying to think of like the average person using these things, they'd probably pull it out every now and then, but not like us. We're always carrying. I mean, for me, I'm always carrying a torch around me.
Like is probably another one.
Yeah, let me see. I got one.
I think you've got a couple of lenses.
Do you? Yeah, this is
that's probably
the P.
You'll see that at Bunnings or pictures of it.
Yeah, this takes D cells, but this is an issue, man. Like you're mentioning, it's bloody leaking again. The cells that I've put in here, so you can see it's getting a bit messy. I cleaned it up and I put some new cells in there, but so if you're not using the light for very long, you really should take out those cells. But those D cells last for ages, especially on the low modes. So I don't know how much they hold, but they just never seem to run out.
But just one exception to like batteries, which I don't mind, so having the AA batteries and a radio. So I've just got this AM FM radio. It's really worth having an AM FM radio because you'll have, at least I found AM kept going, or FM too, but there's emergency broadcast channels. There's certain AM stations, like a local one here, 774. I can just tune into that and listen to updates about a storm or a flood or bushfires. And I think every half an hour or however frequent, they'll do updates and tell you what's going on. So it's good to have an AM radio handy with some batteries that you can pop in. So if you've got some AA batteries that you've set aside, you should probably get about a day worth on some radios. But if you run it, if it's 3-4 days, you're going to run out of power after a day or two. So you might need a couple more batteries in reserve to keep connected. And having a CB radio or an amateur radio, if you've got a ham radio license, can be handy if you need to keep connected when the mobile towers are down. You can't really rely on the internet when trees are falling all over the power lines and the internet's getting knocked out. And if the power to the mobile towers are also down and you're waiting for technicians to get to a mobile site and the generator hasn't automatically started up, the technicians might have to wait for the power company to go and safely remove the power lines and trees from the road so that someone from the telecommunications company can drive out and access the mobile tower and then get a generator up and running so that you can continue having the internet connection. So having a backup like CB radio, UHF one, or just an amateur radio, so it was like a Baofeng's, and you really need a license to use amateur radio, but for CB radio, you can use CB without a license. Yep. So you can listen and stuff, but ideally you need to be licensed to transmit, so you can't press the push to talk button.
Yeah. Can you access? I know you can access FM radio on these ones, but can you access AM? You're like a radio expert. I know only a tiny little bit about radios, but I know AM radio reaches a longer distance, right?
Yeah, there's a
larger distance.
Yeah, it propagates through. Yeah, it's the AM will reach much further, like several hundred kilometers, whereas the FM's a lot shorter distance, and you'll find that you can get distracted by being in trees can block it out.
Yeah, you find a lot of radios at the shops don't have AM functionality anymore. Hey? They only have FM these days.
Yeah, they keep promoting podcasts. Like I guess this is a podcast, but they keep promoting internet connected stuff and like install the app on your phone and listen to the app instead of using AM or FM radio. But I mean, if you go an hour outside of a CBD, you're gonna have patchy mobile reception, and internet's not really that great. So you do rely on access to AM and FM radio. So I keep listening to AM radio. I find that there's like digital DAB radio within the city, but as you go further and further out, you lose access to all of that, and AM becomes more reliable.
Tim, have you seen that movie? Leave the World Behind? Have you heard of it?
I think I've heard of it. I don't think I've watched it.
Yeah, it's reminding me of that. I watched it recently, and it's basically about there's like a kind of attack, some type of attack, and there's a family that go out into the country while this happens, and all the communication systems just completely go down, and the guys like trying to drive back into, I think he's trying to drive back near to the city to check something, what's going on, but he doesn't have his GPS on his, because the GPS system's not working. So he just ends up driving around in circles, not knowing what to do. And like, it's quite eye-opening, isn't it? Like how much we rely on connectivity pretty much for everything, our phones for everything, and any type of anything outside of, just actually analog signals, or just, reading a map. Even people almost have lost the ability to even interpret that. I mean, my dad was a cartographer, and he taught me how to read maps when I was young.
Trying to think, I haven't done a whole heap of bushwalking, but like in terms of just navigating around cities and suburbs, I find that I've got a really good memory, and I can just remember exactly which direction. But I guess if you plonk me in the middle of nowhere in a bush, that's when I'd struggle, and you'd have to. I mean, I've got a digital watch, so if I had like an analog watch, I could at least use the 12 in the hour hand and try to point towards the sun and figure out which way is north. But yeah, need to go back to basics. But anyway, that hopefully need to study up a bit before chucking myself in that situation, so you don't get lost.
Yeah,
because I have had a mate who went for a walk and got lost for 5 hours. I'm like, where are you? Like, he eventually came back through the blackberries and like all scratched up. He just wandered off from camp and got lost for 5 hours.
Far out. Like I got a bunch of different watches. This is a Casio ProTrek. I think it's a PRW 3000. It's an older model, but it has a compass, barometer on it, and it's also
Cool.
what you call it. You can charge it via sun because it's got a solar panel as well. There, I know that the G-Shock have released this really cool new Rangeman, and it's got its inbuilt GPS in it. I mean, it's amazing. I think it's about $1,000 something. But yeah, I've never had to really use it in that situation.
It is interesting with not being able to rely on any digital signals if you've got GPS being blocked as well. Because I know in the US they're doing training, or not training, but I think out near the coast they disabled GPS and wanted to test stuff. But more so here, it's just if you've got a bushfire, you might have all of your infrastructure going down, like the power goes down and the mobiles go down. That's where you need you need water, like fresh drinking water or clean drinking water, and ideally access to food, because you end up having holidaymakers out just raiding the local general stores, and then they're all out of food and toilet paper. It's like the pandemic all over when people are fighting over toilet paper and you've got nothing, and you can't have... There's not a lot of fuel in the countryside. If you can quickly run out of fuel, and then you can't rely on the generators. So it's... I guess,
and keep a bit of a stockpile of some backup fuel yourself, just in case.
I don't. I don't have that much fuel. Probably got like 5 liters or something as a backup, and whatever's in the cars. But I guess battery. Yeah, you get have battery walls, and I found that some colleagues have got battery backup with the solar, but they haven't. It's not set up correctly to provide off-grid supply. So when the power gets cut, they found that they couldn't use the batteries, which was not good, because when the trees knocked out the power lines, they lost power, and then they couldn't use their battery backup to supply power to the house, even though they had like 6 kilowatts of supply that they could have been using, but it hadn't been configured or set up properly. That's worth figuring out if you're going to have batteries as a backup and solar, whether or not you can run it while being off grid. And it's more expensive, like it's tens of thousands of dollars, I think. So it's not easily accessible. But I think that'd be a more sustainable way than if you can have solar and battery backups, but you might not get a lot if it's during winter and it's overcast all the time. But there's a trade-off between not having sunlight that's charging the cells versus having trees that are blocking these roads. Like you have hundreds of trees just knocking everything out, and you might not have access through the roads for several weeks because it's just taking forever for them to clear all the roads. So yeah, it depends where you are. If you're in like the middle of nowhere, you might want to have a completely off-grid system working properly instead of relying on the grid to work. Because it was in a report from the local power supplier. I think 2022, they highlighted that all of these transmission towers are at risk because they were built to standards from like 40, 50 years ago, and they weren't designed to cope with the high winds that they've been experiencing, and it's likely they're going to keep falling over unless they go and replace them or mitigate it by bolstering it somehow. So they've got no risks.
There's still 10,000 houses out there that are out of power at the moment.
Yeah, that's good. It was like 250 about 4 days ago, 250,000. So it's getting better and better, but it's still...
Yeah.
It's...
Have you got like water filtration systems? Because I know there's like in a bag I bought one of these, what do you call them, these life straw thingos a while back. So it filters out bacteria and just general sediment out the water, making it safe to drink. It doesn't filter down to viruses unless you get a specific version of that brand. There's another one, I think, Survivor Filter, that has it's rated, I think, it from filter over 10,000 liters of water, and it has a hand pump. So it's quite an interesting filtration system.
Filters, which is not really the charcoal thing. But the charcoal filters, I'm not sure how good they are. I've relied on the water being clean. I guess we're fortunate to have clean drinking tap. Like we can just drink the tap water in Melbourne and the surrounding area, which is really good. But we just boil the water in the worst case scenario, and we rely on the gas being available. So if we don't have gas or electricity, that's a big problem. So far, we've just had big power outages and still had gas supply. So that's been okay for us here. But if that both goes down and houses don't have gas, then that can be trickier.
We've covered so much. Like we've covered some lights. We've covered general preparation in emergencies. If you're living out further out, So I guess, we will also post some links to products that we recommend as well. So these are going to be ones that we have either owned or tested ourselves, or if we don't own them, we'll mention that. But there's so many different lights, and I think to go through all of them would just take too much time. So we just list them down below and maybe make a recommendation based on that. But I think, did you have anything else to, Tim, before we sort of finish off?
Keen to know what the listeners' thoughts are on like what's been their experience during like major power outages, floods, bushfires, and what have you used to overcome those challenges? Sometimes you're prepared, sometimes you're not, and then when you're not prepared, you might just find something lying around, and then that solves the issue. But what was that problem, and how did you solve it?
If you guys are watching and you have questions as well, because I'm sure that Tim and I, we've been talking pretty casually about a few different topics, but if there's anything that we didn't cover, maybe you have a specific question about a light or product we've been talking about, or just scenario, just leave it down below in the comments, and either one of us will get back to you. But really interested to hear how you thought of this first podcast as well. It's you know, we're a little bit shaky in some parts. We're still ironing out the recording and everything. But you know, I think the most important thing is that we can both just share some of our experiences as well as you guys share your experiences. And if there's anything that we can help out with too, you know, we'll do our best to answer your questions. But yeah, any feedback, let us know how you found, if you have any, found this episode. If you have any suggestions as well for next time, topics, yeah, because that's something we're really, I mean, we've got a few topics, but if there's anything that really you wanted to talk about or for us to talk about, just comment and let us know. Just check the links in the description as well if you want to know a little bit more. Tim's got a website. I've got a website. And yeah. So thanks for watching, and we'll catch you all next time.
Stay safe.